And in this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast, we have on Mr. Nic Marks, who is known as the happiness expert. He is CEO and founder of Friday Pulse, and he talks to us all about why happiness is the ultimate KPI in your company. We're going to be diving into this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast. Do you want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Kerry Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco-warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality. Yee! What is up, you happy hustlers out there? Kerry Jack here, and on the mic today, we have Mr. Nic Marks. Nic Marks, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, my man.
Thank you very much for having on.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a doozy. You are the happiness expert. I mean, you are the CEO and founder of Friday Pulse. You're a statistician, you're an author, and you are going to tell us, the happy hustlers, how to put the happy in our hustle even deeper at another level. And I know this has been your life's work. You have a viral TED Talk on the topic. You have your whole career centered on how companies and entrepreneurs and individuals can just increase their happiness. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic. But before we get into all that good stuff, Nic, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
Oh, that's the question. I trained as a psychotherapist when I was young. So I'm a statistician by trade, but my mother was a family therapist and I was quite interested in her sort of way of being. So I trained to be a therapist. I never really practiced as a therapist, but the training's been quite influential in my work.
Very interesting. Yeah. What would you say was your biggest takeaway from that training as psychotherapist?
Well, a therapist, really what they do is they listen. And actually with stats, that's the same thing that we're doing with statistics. We're listening to a population rather than to an individual. So in that sense, I see quite some parallels around them. And probably the other thing is that therapy has a rhythm to it. It's a repeated ritual, a repeated habit. And I think if we're going to make change in our own lives and at work, then finding a repeated rhythm is really important for that, whether the therapeutic hour works for you or not, but finding something, that could just be about your fitness, going to the gym at the same time every week so that you just basically, you get into a habit of doing that, whatever it is. So I think that's another thing it taught me about rituals and the rhythm to those rituals.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, and speaking of rituals and rhythm, a lot of people go to work, right? I know you and I both know the statistic, but work is like the thing that we are going to spend the second most amount of our time doing, bar none. Like it's sleep and then it's work. And a lot of people are not really happy at work, or at least the majority, according to Gallup State of the Global Workplace study, right? 2 out of every 3 employees are disengaged and unhappy at work. Now, correct any of my stats because you obviously know better than I do. But this is some of the data that I've seen. When it comes to happiness at work, why does it matter, first and foremost?
So firstly, let's correct your stats.
Thank God.
Well, Gallup are asking about engagement and they define engagement. I mean, no one quite knows how they define engagement really, but when you ask about whether people are happy, it's very much how you frame the question. If you ask how happy they are at work compared to other activities, then it comes out as the second least happy activity of the day.
Interesting.
With the only thing less is the commute. That's the only thing that's less happy in a typical day is the commute. Then if you ask people if they when they think about work, are they happy, then most people will say they're okay. I would say probably sort of it's more like 70% of people will say they are happy at work. Now that still doesn't mean to say that they're they're as happy as they could be, and it doesn't mean to say whatever. But the big benefits of happiness, well, I talk about there being 7 successes. I could say 7 successes of happy teams,
Mm.
and they are staff retention, which is that you obviously don't leave as much if you're happy.
Yep.
Talent attraction, because a happy
Yep.
team, a happy organization will attract better people.
Yep.
Productivity is that productivity
Yep.
increase, whether that's measured by sales or anything else. I'm going to forget my own 7. Resilience, which is that basically their ability to bounce back from anything, any setbacks. Creativity and collaboration are much better. And finally, I hope that's 7. It's business value, which is basically that businesses that, things like share price, return on assets, profitability at a firm level increase. So there's really a very, very strong business case for it. And of course, it makes life better. Oh, I know what the 6th one is. So I've just remembered is less sickness, less stress, less sickness.
Yep.
So it's wins across the board for the individual, for the team leader, for the organization, and even the shareholders.
Yeah. I mean, those are absolute gold. So like employee retention, you mentioned, talent attraction, productivity, resilience, creativity and collaboration, less sickness, and then business value. And I'd like to go deeper into some of those specifically, because I think a lot of the happy hustlers out there, they have companies, or they want to have companies. Then, they're entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. They really crave the freedom, time freedom, creative freedom, financial freedom. And a lot of them are running teams. And these 7 different factors that you just mentioned are oftentimes what can be the difference between success and failure with their companies. And I think not enough people pay attention to the actual pulse. I know you have Friday pulse, and we'll get into that, of their team, like their heartbeat, the energy that their team brings. Where do you see most leaders go awry when it comes to prioritizing happiness?
Oh, I think quite understandably, leaders are under huge pressure to deliver results, time pressure. And it can feel like, oh my God, there's another thing to think about, that basically I'm going to have to make my team happy as well. And so I think it's a kind of understandable pushback. I mean, the thing is, actually, a happy team will save you time, because there won't be all the hassle that comes. I mean, if you run an unhappy team, it's a nightmare, and so people are angry, they're cross with each other, they're not working their best work, so it is everyone's self-interest. And it sounds a little out there, happiness. I mean, you talked off saying about Gallup engagement. Engagement sounds much more like what a leader wants. We want engagement. We want them, focused, intense when we're there. And that's understandable, but that isn't a good bargain for the employee. Basically, you're just, to the employee, that just lands as, you just want me to work harder for the same money, sort of thing. So you've got to find a deal which is a fair deal. And a fair deal is, I want to make you a job that you really enjoy. And then, wow, I'm going to do this job to the best of my abilities because I really enjoy it. So it's one of those things where if you go tangentially at it and you come through happiness, you actually, ironically, get more engagement than if you go directly for engagement.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like common sense, doesn't it? Like, oh, if you're happier at work, you'll be more productive. You'll just be more enjoyable to be around. Happy salespeople are said to produce 37% more in terms of revenue than unhappy salespeople. Not to mention the belief that happy employees have, and the proud nature that they possess when they are happy at the workplace. They speak about their companies in a different light. It seems like with all these common sense variables at play, why do you think happiness in the workplace and at large is lacking?
People leadership, in that I think that most team leaders are promoted for their technical skills, for their length of service, rather than their people skills. And I think to be fair to them, think they're given very little support and training about how to be a good people leader. I mean, I don't know the stats in the States as well, but I know it's the same trend, which is that organizations are investing less and less in training, and what training there is tends to be about IT, tends to be about the product, tends to be very focused on the business things, because that looks like it's the sort of surest way to profitability. But actually, the soft people skills, which is a misnomer anyway, but the soft skills are the hard skills. They're the difficult ones. And they're the ones that deliver most value. I mean, Google have done a big bit of research on this. I can't remember if it was called the Aristotle or the Oxygen Project. They had a couple, but they had Amy Edmondson, who's done all the work on psychological safety, was involved with these. And they have so much data and they're data driven. They basically looked at which were their most successful hires. And they found that the ones that, that had good soft people skills, they listened, they had a coaching mindset, they, they were empathetic to their employees, they thought about their well-being as well as the business, that these people ran better teams. They still needed the business focus. Let's not say you don't drop that and go, let's just make a happy team, that'll be fine. I mean, feasibly you might come up with something like that, but they have to be really, but people need a direction. They need to know what the clear goals they're trying to achieve. They need those are best if they align with their strengths and their talents. And then you get it. So it's really about being happy and successful as a team. You want both of those things, because if you're what I find, so actually you can think of happy and successful as a sort of 2x2 grid with low happiness, high happiness, low performance, high performance. So in the top right quadrant are great teams. They're happy and successful. In the bottom left, teams are miserable. No one wants to be in those.
Yeah.
But then you've got the diagonals, right? And so if I talk to a senior leader, what they're worried about is the top diagonal, which is happy and not successful. They're worried they're going to have a slacking team, a team that isn't pulling their weight.
Yeah.
It's a reasonable fear. What they've actually got more of, and I've got stats that suggest they've got 3 times as many of them, are burning out teams. So teams that are unhappy and successful, where they're stressed and they are successful, but they're not going to be sustainably successful because they're burning out. And so unhappiness is a risk for a business. It's a risk for a business. And, it's not the only thing that drives success, but it absolutely does help drive success.
Yeah. Wow. I love that quadrant. I mean, you broke it down very elegantly. I don't want to butcher it, but I do want to repeat it for all the happy hustlers, because I think that was a really important point. So you have on the left quadrant, you said high happiness, and then the lower left is low happiness. And on the top right is like high success. And then the bottom right is low success. Is that correct?
Well, you've got a
Switch.
interaction. So you've got a team it's the axes. Yes, maybe you're saying the same thing as me, but I use axes. So basically, you've got low happiness and high happiness.
Yep.
Low success, high success. High success, high happiness are great teams. That's what you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
The worst ones is have the miserable ones, and then you've got the slacking and the burning out.
Exactly. And I mean, I want everyone to really take stock of their team right now and their company, and just actually place, your team, your company, subjectively, obviously, in a quadrant. And just really, I think the first step to any change is awareness, right? Just like being aware. Oh, okay. I think my team's like, they're successful, but they're like not happy. They're going to burn out, like I did with my tech company. And I think that is an epidemic in and of itself, this burnout culture. Like, we glorify working on the weekends, and we think staying late and getting up early is like the recipe. And I understand you have to work hard. I get that. And I'm a big proponent of it. That's why it's happy hustle. It's not just happy. It's, you got to hustle too. Yeah. But I really think people are missing the boat here when it comes to like one or the other. They think it has to be one or the other. Now, you talk about creating successful and happy teams, and I'm curious, how do we do that, Nic?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
I know. Give us your secrets.
Well, so I mean, weeding back to the idea of what Google said, a coaching mindset, or even back to my thoughts about therapy, which is basically it's about listening, is that I think that, and also team leaders, teams are our experience of work for most people. I mean, there are some people that are totally sole traders, or they work very individually. So some people in a call center, some tech people work very individually. Some people, but most of us work in teams, and some people work in several teams, but they work in a group environment. Why do we do that? Because we work better together. An idea worked on by many people gets better. Someone puts this, that it gets a better idea. There's very, very few things which was a breakthrough from one individual. They've normally been built on by lots of people, and even that one individual, all of the reading, all of the other learning they would have done before. So we collaborate. That's what makes us a successful species, is our ability to collaborate. People talk about us competing. No, it's collaboration. Collaboration is what's made humans successful. So we're really good at collaborating, but it takes time. Relationships become the core of that. And here's a phrase I use. Okay, I've just want to have a little pause because I really like this phrase. Is that time is the currency of relationships, not money. Time. And you think about it, you don't have a good romantic relationship unless you spend time with them. You can't bring up children unless you spend time with them. You lose your best friends if you don't spend time with them.
Yeah.
Time is a limited resource. So that's why we don't have lots of best friends, because we've only got so much time. And our teams, to run a team takes time. So to promote a team leader on their technical skills and then not realize that they need to have 40% of their week needs to be spent with their team, and only 50% can be on their technical work. They've got to have the space to manage their team. And of course, that 40% of time that is their week invested in the 5-6 people in their team is going to amplify the team's thing. So you get into a space as a team leader where you have to support the autonomy of your team. And in some ways, that's very hard because you have to give up your own autonomy. There's so many team leaders that say, it's my way or the highway. Well, you might even know how to do it better than them, but you won't motivate them that way, and actually them learning their own way, and they might surprise you and do something better than you've ever thought. In fact, they will, if you let them. They will surprise you. They will come back and challenge you. Stories just popped into my head of when I used to work in the think tank work. I worked in public policy for a long time. My TED talks about that work. And I employed this young statistician to help me on a what's called the Happy Planet Index. It's one of the bit of works I'm most known for. And I designed this index, and I thought I was so smart. And he was like 25. He had a PhD or a master's. He was certainly smart. And it was his first sort of 3 months into his work, and he changed something about it. And I went, well, you changed it. He goes, and he could see I wasn't happy. And he goes, well, didn't you employ me to make it better? And I thought, yeah, you're right. And that's what teams do for you. They you bounce ideas off and things get better. And a team leader, that takes time. And so if you're going to build a happy team, we have to free team leaders to be better people leaders. And that takes some time. It doesn't actually, I say 40% of the time, but I'm including within that all of their one-to-ones, all of their direction setting, all of their, what they really need to do is get the group to gel together. So before we went on air, you asked me what my football team is. So you're a sports fan, yeah?
Yep.
You're a sports fan?
Yeah. The teams I won't say religiously. Like I watch them here and there, just to be clear.
Yeah. But we all know that the teams that win aren't necessarily the ones with the best individuals.
True.
They're the ones that are the best teams.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to build a team. And building a team is not going for a pizza and having a beer once every 2 weeks. Building a team is every week systematically reviewing last week. How was last week? So this is the sort of ritual part I take from the sort of therapy, which is, how was last week? What went well for you last week? What didn't go well for you? friction and flow, if you want to think about it in those terms, but in terms of how you do the work. So a lot of tech teams do retrospectives about the work itself, or even how they built the code. But this is, how did we get on with it? How did it feel for you? But it's the same idea as a retrospective, as a scrum, if you want. It's the same idea, but it's for happiness. And you'll find that people, firstly, want to share how they feel, and two, everybody just genuinely wants everyone else to be happy in the team. It's not a point of friction, but we don't know. We're blind to someone else unless they tell us. So you have to set up an atmosphere in your team where you can talk together like that, and it's much better together than individually, because then you create the bonds and you do that. So it's about recognizing people's successes in public. It's about thanking each other. It's about acknowledging their frustrations, trying to fix them, even if you can't fix them because they're outside of your team. Just the fact they feel acknowledged that they're frustrated will support them. And that's the basic idea. It doesn't need to take more than half an hour a week, that meeting. But, I recommend you have the start the week meeting, which is reviewing last week, every week, same time, whatever it is, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. on a Monday morning, half an hour, whole team.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's gold, really. I love what you said about time is the currency of relationships. Like, it is our most precious commodity, and you have to be intentional about how you spend it. And I agree with you. I think leaders, they could be more intentional, most of them, with their team and how they spend their time in order to foster that community and that culture of happiness and productivity, right? I think, again, to your point, those things go hand in hand. Something that you said that really hits home for me is the rituals, the systemization of actually measuring yourself and your team's progress and happiness. That's something I'm a big proponent of. I have the 10 alignments of being a happy hustler. It's what my whole book is based on, the soul mapping framework. And we have this blissful balance, or I'll send you one if my team hasn't already. But it's a whiteboard fridge magnet that goes on your fridge, and you could track your happiness and your blissful balance in each of these 10 different areas of life every day. And then at the end of the week, you can see your score. Where do you rank?
Yeah.
And those little things that you do daily then add up to your weekly total score, and ultimately your monthly total score, your yearly total score, etc. And it just builds upon one itself, the compound effect, will you? And I think if you just start right now with your team, start to have those weekly check-in meetings where you're actually measuring the pulse of your team from the week prior, and you start to actually prioritize happiness and productivity and some of these, different factors that Nic is talking about, you will see a massive increase in your income and your impact as a company, right? And as an individual. You did reference the Happiness Planet Index, and I'd love to go there. Can you explain that to all the happy hustlers who aren't aware of what HPI is?
So the Happy Planet Index is this, we first published it 2006. And its idea is that GDP is a very bad measure of a country's progress, and we should create a new indicator for the issues of our time. And for me, the ultimate outcome of a nation, a society, is how happy and healthy are its citizens. So instead of measuring GDP as your measure of progress, then you should measure happiness and longevity.
Yeah.
But there's one caveat. We've only got one planet. So how can we do that in a one planet lifestyle? So basically the Happy Planet Index becomes a sustainable well-being index, an efficiency index, if you like. It's basically how much population well-being do we get for our planetary use. So it's one divided by the other. And what that means is that a country like the USA, you are relatively happy, though slightly less happy than Europe. You are relatively life expectancy, slightly lower than Europe. So Nordic countries score particularly well on life expectancy and happiness. Finland, particularly, Denmark. Well, there's nuances. Denmark's slightly less good on life expectancy because they drink and smoke a lot, whereas the Finns don't. But that's I don't know. I might be with the Danes on that, but that's a different matter. But then, how much resources do you use? Well, okay, so you are Costa Rica is slightly happier than USA. They live slightly longer, and they use a quarter of the resources. So Costa Rica does much better. In fact, it comes top of the Happy Planet Index, and the US comes way down it because you use so many resources. So it's a sustainability. It's a can we try and please live with just 1.5 degrees of climate change sort of index. And it was hugely successful because it articulates the goals of sustainable development in three very simple indicators: happiness, life expectancy, and ecological footprint. And I did it, in my policy world then, I really did it to mimic the Human Development Index and be very simple. They're hard to argue with all of them. And it's been moderately successful. I mean, yes, it's got me a TED Talk. It's still talked about, but we clearly haven't solved climate change yet, so it hasn't achieved its objective.
Well, I think that's a bold task for, one man. I think we need to come together as a team, right?
Yeah, I know. But as a young man, I was quite ambitious.
Yeah. Well, I think what you created is making a huge, massive positive impact, probably more than you even give yourself credit for. And, I think tracking happiness, life expectancy, and your ecological footprint, those are really great barometers for the overall health of a nation and its people. And I'm really inspired by it. I am curious, like, where does it fit now? Like, how are you implementing HPI? Are you still consulting with governments? Are you implementing these learnings with companies? What's the current state of HPI, and how do you implement it?
So the Happy Planet Index I did with my old organization, which was called New Economics Foundation. It was a think tank in London, and they did some more editions after I left there. I left there in about 2012, but they rather let it go. So we've managed to take it out of them, and it's now sits with a Berlin-based think tank called Hot or Cool, who are very much on how do we create sustainable lifestyles. So one of my old team, in fact, the young man I told the story about before, who said, "Can I make it better?" He's called Surma Abdullah. He's what he calls he's a love baby. His parents were Egyptian and Palestinian, and they were at war when his parents met. So he's a love baby from a Palestine. Anyway, he's very, very smart. He's a very, very good statistician. So he's gone there to head up their sustainable well-being. And so we are looking at new ways of communicating it, not just as an index, but with films, documentaries, and looking at it within countries. So we've always previously only done it between countries, but looking within countries. So there will be people in the US who are living brilliantly sustainable, happy lives. How do we put a spotlight on them? So, it's easier for people to relate to people from the same culture as them. So we're going to look at ways of doing that. But that's the next 3-5 year project, but it's definitely not dead. And I'm just a consultant to it now. That's sort of old mental to it really now.
Hey, I love it. My wife is actually creating a film studio all on eco-conscious films, so I'll have to connect you. And I know Craig Gleason, who did A Plastic Ocean, and I could maybe make some contacts there, because I think a documentary on this topic would be wildly not only popular but also very powerful. And so, yeah, that's awesome, man. I do have to ask this question because I know you probably get it all the time. Whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming. But I have to tell you, the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquire skills. You've probably heard people talk about, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure-free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and helping you to increase your conversions guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that The Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available, because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode. And I know a lot of the people out in the internet space, they talk about money and happiness, right? And the correlation of the two. And I'm curious, to you, does money buy happiness? And what's your perspective there?
Money and happiness are definitely related. If you are poor, you have a lack of money, and particularly if you're indebted, your happiness, mental health is suppressed. There is what we call a social gradient on happiness, absolutely for certain. But it's not a linear relationship. So it's more what we call logarithmic, but basically it's a percentage change. So a 10% increase in income will generate some extra happiness. Not quite wherever you are on the income spectrum. When you get really, really high, it probably doesn't make any difference. And also, when you get onto super high income, super high wealth, you actually have a whole lot of inconveniences around, security, those sort of things. So the super, super high net worth people, I think we should just forget about. There are very few of them. But basically, it's much better. Always, it's better to have some money. But the problem is the return on your investment of time. It is totally non-trivial to move from an average household income up to the top 10%. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of hours. And your risk is that you get some extra happiness from your money, but you burn a lot of happiness in relationships, in stress, in all sorts of other things. And so it's not a reliable, it's what we call an extrinsic motivation. It's a lot about status too, that you feel better because you've got more money. And of course that can make you, but that is insecure. That is unstable ways of creating happiness. The stable ways are when they come from your own values, from your own strengths, from the things that you love doing. So you will most certainly find people at the lower end of the income spectrum who are much happier than people at the higher end. They do exist. There's a lot of variation in there. There are more miserable people at the bottom of the income spectrum. They have very hard lives.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with your train of thought. I heard a study, I think it was debunked, but I'd like to ask you about it. There was a Nobel Prize winning laureate who correlated money and happiness, and how, I think in the United States, after making around $75,000 a year as an individual, the correlation between money and happiness diminishes significantly. Are you familiar with that study? And B, can you tell me your perspective on what is that number, and is there a number when money and happiness is no longer correlated?
There's not one inflection point, but it's roughly right for the USA that's sort of at that sort of level, that you don't get so much extra increase from happiness. But if you were in Central Eastern Europe, the number would be the shape of the curve can be different between countries. So we typically have a falling marginal utilities of income. But if you look in some poorer countries, it's actually almost a straight line, because poverty is so bad and things like that. So there's a lot of differences between countries. But roughly speaking, it's roughly right, but it's the wrong statistic, because if you look, money is not the biggest driver of happiness. It's a small driver of happiness. Relationships are a much, much bigger thing. So you've probably heard of the Harvard study, the Harvard longitudinal study, which is this study of people which started in Harvard. I'm going to say the 1930s. I can't quite remember. But one of the Kennedy brothers was one of the original people. They took 500 Harvard men, right? Men, okay. And they tracked them through their lifetimes. They actually, to give them credit, they added 500 extra people from Boston, from lower income groups, to the study later on. For both the lower income and the Harvard graduates, the most important predictor of lifetime happiness was relationships. And the
Wow.
second most predicting was relationships. You know, relationships is the biggest factor in this, you know, and they mean so much more. So, and that, you know, that doesn't only mean a marriage. It means friendships. It means, you know, all sorts of things. But, you know, if you have a good, you know, best friend, whether you're married to them or not, you know, or whatever, then that's a real strength in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I do know that study you're referencing, and you know, you just think about it in your own life, like the quality of your relationships truly makes up your level of happiness and joy. And if you're around, my good buddy John Gordon wrote a book called The Energy Bus. I don't know if you know that book, but he talks about how if you're around energy vampires, they just suck the energy from you, you know,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be happy with those type of people in your life. And that's why, you know, there's a quote, you know, you are the sum of your 5 closest relationships, right? So you're either right, you know, like raising your level by being around these individuals, or you're decreasing your level. And I think everyone just needs to take stock on that relationship front and really understand, hey, these people, not only do they affect your business and your success, quote unquote, but they're going to affect your joy. And maybe if you're not super happy and you're not really thrilled about your reality, you have to take stock on who's in your inner circle, right? Um, this is some really powerful stuff we're talking here, Nic, and I really am enjoying it. I do want to ask you about your company, Friday Pulse. Talk to us about Friday Pulse, and what was the genesis behind it?
So I did my TED Talk in 2010. Now, for a guy in a small London think tank with very small budgets, to be able to go on the global stage of TED was a little exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched it. It was awesome.
And also, just, I mean, a huge opportunity to spread the message, and you know, relatively difficult to contain it within 18 minutes. I was given 18 minutes. People only given 7 or 8 now. Actually, you could do it in 7, 8. It's just a discipline. But you do that, and you know, and then I became a speaker for a while because, you know, people started offering me really ridiculous sums of money to come and speak. And the irony of like traveling to speak about the Happy Plan Index was not lost on me. And so after about a year, I thought, well, actually, being a sort of after lunch entertainment is not really what I thought of as a career. And I'd always had this idea that if I really wanted to get serious about helping people be happier, I had to reach adults. In public policy, you don't reach adults very much, in the sense that people make policy around schools, they make policies around health, which tends to be older people. So they're quite good at the beginning and the end of life. In the middle of life, they just tax people and collect their rubbish, their trash. Yeah. I mean, it's not much more. I mean, build some roads. I mean, there is other stuff, as we've noticed with COVID and everything. But you know, it's hard to reach people's lives. Whereas at work, well, people, that's where they spend most of their time, and they're not particularly happy there. So if I wanted to create something around happiness, surely work would be the way to do it. Now, I rather arrogantly, because I was like feeling king of the world after a TED Talk, thought, oh, I'll go in, and I've been critical of how governments measure well-being, and I've been really successful the last 10 years, unexpectedly successful, I have to say, you know, and then, oh, I'll just do that with work. But I didn't realize this sort of difficulty of breaking into a completely new field. And also I had to learn, I had to make mistakes again. You know, this as an entrepreneur, you approach things. Well, as a statistician, I started to make mistakes, you know, not bad mistakes, but things that meant that the tools I created weren't easy enough to use. They weren't simple enough. So the Happy Planet Index is really simple. And I forgot the lesson of that simplicity, and I created too complex a measure. And so, you know, this is a gentle critique of your 10 hassle balance stuff. Is 10 is quite a lot of numbers to track at once. Okay.
No, I agree. And I've already found that out.
Yeah. And it's like, and people get confused if they're trying to. So I really decided I wanted to have one indicator, which was, I call it a good bad signal. That if you want a clear statistical instrument, you need to know when it goes up, that's better. If it goes down, it's worse. You want to know that you can impact it, so that things that you do can move the dial, because if you're just watching, you can't do anything about it. And you want it to be relatable to people to relate to it. And after some time, 5-6 years of doing lots of work, lots of workshops, we came up with weekly team happiness as that measure. So every week, asking your team how happy you are. That's why we call Friday Pulse, because on a Friday we ask you, how was your week? And basically it creates an indicator, have people had a good week or not? And the brilliant thing about it is that we're not happy all of the time. In fact, that would probably be dysfunctional. In fact, that would be dysfunctional to be happy all the time. And we see it with toxic positivity, people who just seem to smile through everything, and actually they're fake, aren't they? We go up and down. We have 3 moods in a morning, if we're honest, so it's very dynamic, our happiness. And if we are measuring happiness, I wanted to collect data which express that dynamic. And the dynamic thing is, you collect it every week and you see people go up and down, and then it gives you data. Businesses, numbers are the language of business. So give them a number on people's experience, and then they're going to want to manage it, right? So, what you want is for people to have not too many bad weeks. They're going to have some. There's going to be setbacks. How quickly do you bounce back from it? So that is basically the premise of Friday Pulse. That's what excites me as a statistician, as basically as a change agent. I want to create positive change in people's lives. So my intervention in that, there's lots of other valid ones. My intervention in that, create a number. I'm a statistician, create a number. So, the number is, were you happy this week? And we basically, it's based around a very simple question. How happy were you at work this week? From very unhappy to very happy, 5-point scale. Simple. Everybody can answer it. And the reality is that most weeks I click happy. Occasionally I click okay, or occasionally unhappy if something bad's gone on. Occasionally, quite often I hit very happy, because I happen to my team's doing very good at the moment. I feel very happy working on it. But, I'm normally up in that green zone. But when I dip down, I know what it's about. And I can talk to my team what it's about for me, and they can talk to me about when they're not happy. And so you get a conversation, and of course you're not necessarily solving them, but you're listening to them, like that therapy thing. The data is reflecting back to them so they can see it themselves, and then you have conversations about how to improve it. And that's your weekly team meeting with your team leader as well. That's really the core of what I call it a cycle. I call it measure, meet, repeat. So you measure, you meet toward it, and then you repeat it.
Meet, repeat. I love that. You said something interesting too. Numbers are the language of business. And I think that is so true. And you also talked about the simplicity of your measure. And I think that is really important, because, I don't know what it is down to now, but they say humans have an attention span of like 8 seconds. Now it's probably down to like 2 seconds, if that, right? But like, we have to capture attention. We have to deal with adversity. And if there's unhappiness, we need to quantify it and measure it. I am curious when it comes to the algorithm per se, like the rubric behind it. Why did you stumble on that 5-part answer rubric? Or why? I'm sure you didn't stumble. What was your logic there?
So it's a response scale of a question, isn't it? So, and there are options there. So you can have yes, no questions. That's a 1-0 variable. You can have 0 to 10 scale. So very famously for the Net Promoter Score uses 0 to 10. I'm not keen on 0 to 10 scales. What basically happens is that people only use the top of the scale. So you're not, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 don't really mean much. They just start cramming into that top. And then people get very confused. What's a 7? What's an 8? We don't, actually feelings are not a continuous variable. They are sort of, I feel this, I feel that. It's quite rough and ready, our feelings. They're very ancient internal signals from an evolutionary perspective. They come way before cognition. They come before neural networks. They're built very, very much on well, I don't know if you want to get really nerdy, it's called homeostasis, but basically the idea that an organism needs to keep into a dynamic balance, right? So actually, if your balance is really important, and that's a single cell organism right up to us. And they need to understand whether they're a good fit to their environment, and they sense things. Basically, they're keeping variables, chemical variables, in a range. And happiness is like that too, in the sense that it's a good, bad signal. It's telling us, are we a good fit in our environment? When we feel happy, we're a good fit. When we feel unhappy, we're not. And that's the tapping, you're tapping into that. And it's a very rough and ready signal. So I use 5 for very pragmatic reasons. It fits on a mobile phone much better than a 10-point scale. You don't get problems hitting the wrong number. We can color code it very easily from red to green. We can create 5 color things. To do that, it's more difficult for 10, 11. It's got a middle point of the scale, which is labeled okay. It's really, really important to give people the option of going, okay. So the simplest one would be unhappy, okay, happy. I would be okay with that, a 3-point scale. I'm not happy with it, unhappy, happy, because people sometimes are in between. They don't want to say they're unhappy, but they don't feel happy. They feel okay. So you need to give them that okay. So I like a 3, a 5. I don't mind a 7-point scale, but it's just a little bit more difficult. We across several languages, it's more difficult to find the words for the different points in that level. So this, but the 7-point scale is good too. I'm not against a 0 to 10, that's an 11-point scale, but I don't think you get better data from it than a 5-point scale, basically.
Love it. I mean, I asked because I use a 5-point scale with my assessment. And I wanted to know, I just, like you actually have the data behind why to use it. I was just like, this sounds good. And my middle point is okay. So look at that. I mean, I'm a statistician almost. I'm kidding. I just insulted all the statisticians.
I get very nerdy about response scales. I get very nerdy about response scales.
I can tell response scales turn you on, Nic. I get it. I mean, I love it. This has been fantastic. I do want to actually plug Friday Pulse, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are like, okay, well, how do I actually take this assessment, and how can I actually use it in my business and for my team? Can you tell us some links, where people can go to actually try this for themselves?
Yeah. So we have a free team version of Friday Pulse. It is a platform that if you're large, and our free team goes up to 11 people. 11 because the football team is 11, the soccer team is 11, so that's why it's not 10. But above that, it's a pay-for subscription, typical SaaS business. You can go to our website and request. At the moment, it's a request only for free team, but you will be granted it. It's just we like to speak to you because our onboarding is good, but I think we find if we just let people start without a conversation, they don't tend to grasp exactly what it is, because it's a reflective tool. It's not just a product like most others. So we ask you just have book a demo, and then you can go ahead. If you're not in a team and you're individual, I have created a product for individuals. It's on our website, fridaypulse.com, and you just look for the happiness test, but you can go directly there. It's called Friday One, because it's an individual person. It's still on our fridaybrand.com. And that's a 5-minute questionnaire on your own happiness at work. And it produces you a report that you can reflect on. Again, it's in that therapeutic thing of basically you put in the data, we reflect back to you with a report. You think about what you can do. I ask some questions in there. So those are the 2 routes to find out. Friday1.com for the individual one, fridaypulse.com for our product, but including there's the free team, which you can sign up for and run along with it. And the idea is it measures on a Friday and it guides that team meeting on a Monday. So we produce you a slide deck with your last week's results that you can talk about and guide you through a conversation, because that's really how we think you can help team leaders who want to be better people leaders have the data. So I think of it a bit like HelloFresh. Have you ever tried HelloFresh, or one of those boxes of food that arrives once a week? They give you the ingredients and the menu to create a great meal. We give you the ingredients and the agenda to have a good team meeting every week.
Yeah, I love that. So Friday1.com, if you're just listening to this and you're an individual, you want to test it for yourself. If you have a team, FridayPulse.com, and depending on how big your team is, you could do the free version or the paid version. But I really think these science and insights and the data behind it can make all the difference for these teams. So I love that you created this amazing tool and this resource. I do want to ask you a couple of my more traditional happy hustle hack questions and then the rapid fire round, and then we'll wrap this interview up. So this is essentially a tip, a tool, a tactic, something that you do in a couple different disciplines that we like to deem a happy hustle hack. So first being health. I know, health and happiness oftentimes are correlated, right? So I'm curious, do you do anything when it comes to your health, maybe that's a little unique that you can deem a happy hustle hack?
Oh, I don't know that it's unique. So I'm not a creature of speed. Okay. I'm not one of those fast ones, but I in the summer now I swim every morning, first thing before I have a cup of coffee. So I put the coffee on and I swim. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a pool, so I do that. In the winter, I don't walk before coffee, but I probably should do. But I go for a walk every day in the winter. That's my movements. So it's ritual, it's rhythm, and both of those I almost take as a meditation. So when I'm swimming, when I started out, I used to count my lengths. I now don't. I just swim because then my mind can wander, and I like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love swimming too, and it is very meditative. Same with walking. Let's talk about money. Do you have a happy hustle hack, maybe like a way that you save or invest or spend wisely that you could share with the happy hustlers when it comes to money?
I don't know that I do really. I mean, just pay into your pension because you're going to be old for a long time. That would be my only. I mean, I just think people don't understand how long retirement is, and so I think you should pay the most into your pension from as early as possible. So I tell my kids they're in their 20s, pay your pension. Sorry, nothing more exciting than that.
But essentially, you're talking about just like prepare for your retirement and just save wisely, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah.
What about spirituality? Do you have a happy hustle hack when it comes to connecting to a higher power? Maybe something that you do in this arena that we can deem a happy hustle hack?
I salute the sun every morning. I'm not a orthodox. I'm an atheist probably, but I do believe in the beauty of the universe, and so I decided that the sun is my goddess, and she's definitely female, and I say hello to her every morning. And if I feel really, and I feel good, I really stretch my arms out and say a bit of a thank you and namaste, and it's really just a thank you for being alive. I think that's the core of all good spirituality, all good religions is the gratefulness of being alive. So although I don't believe in an orthodox God, I'm happy to be alive.
Amen to that. I'm equally practicing an attitude of gratitude every day. And I just think it's important. It doesn't matter like what you believe. It's just important that you believe in something bigger than yourself and just practice that gratitude mindset. So love that. What about relationships?
But goodness me, it'd be pretty arrogant to not believe in something bigger than yourself, wouldn't it? Sorry,
it surely
about that, it's like
it surely would. It surely would. One last happy hustle hack when it comes to relationships, knowing that is like one of the most important currencies that we possess that dictates our happiness. Do you have something that you do with your family or your spouse or your kids to just foster that loving relationships?
I mean, I as I said, I think it's about time. I mean, with your kids, it's different. It's a different thing with your kids when they get older because you have to let them go. Have you got kids?
I have a baby boy brewing in my wife's belly right now, and that'll be my first child.
Well, read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Do you know that little book?
No, but I'll write it down right now.
Written in 1920s. It's the most beautiful piece, and it's got a beautiful piece on children and raising children and how they belong to tomorrow, where you cannot belong. And it's a very, very beautiful poem on and I took it very seriously when I was parenting. But as children get older, you have to let them go. So I think men, maybe this is me partly. I'm a bit of a loner. I mean, I have a very good relationship with my wife and I have friends, but I have to remind myself to see my male friends and do something with them. And so sports is part of that. Actually, we go and watch rugby some of my friends with me, and but try to find healthy habits that don't only involve alcohol for building friendships.
Yeah, solid, wise words, my friend. This is great, man. I do want to put you through the rapid fire round. So this is where I just ask you random things and you answer honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite food? Go.
Sausages.
Favorite movie?
That's really hard. I don't watch many films.
First thing that came to mind.
I don't know.
You can say The Notebook. You want to.
No, I think I want to say. Guys, you see, I'm really stumped because I don't watch many films, but let's say Inside Out, because I thought the Pixar movie was very cute on how it dealt with emotions.
Okay, awesome. What about favorite book?
Oh, well, Kyle Gibran, The Prophet would really come in there. My favorite recent book is called Being You by Anil Seth, and it's about consciousness. It's about the latest science of consciousness. And I thought it was absolutely mind-blowing. So he basically says that our self is a stable hallucination.
Interesting. Wow. What's your spirit animal, Nic?
A koala.
Nice. I love it. Best business advice?
Watch your cash flow. I think that's where I've gone wrong. I thought we're bigger than we were at times. So I think, watch your cash flow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think ideas are easy. Execution is really hard. And I've spent too much on the wrong type of execution sometimes. Yeah.
Very good words. Wise indeed. 3 things you're most grateful for.
Oh, my parents. I had loving parents. That's a massive head start in life. I'm very grateful to have met my wife. It's the second time round, so I'm lucky. And I'm really grateful to still have my hair, aged nearly 60.
And you have a great head of hair, I will say.
Well, it's a big head of hair, whether it's great or not, but I enjoy
it. Good. At least you enjoy it. All right. Last question in the rapid fire round. If you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on it, what does that billboard read, Nic?
Good lives don't have to cost the earth.
Powerful. I love that. Nic, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, man, for sharing your love, your light, your happiness statistics, and Friday Pulse with the world, the Happiness Planet Index, and just everything you've created. I'm just really grateful to have shared this amazing conversation with you and your wisdom with the happy hustlers out there. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much. And if people want to connect me, I post on LinkedIn. So just find me, Nic Marks, no K on Nic, Nic Marks, and follow me or connect with me. And I try and post every weekday.
Yeah, definitely check out Nic Marks on LinkedIn. We'll link that up in the show notes. Check out Friday Pulse and Friday1.com. Nic, this has been phenomenal. Final question. What does happy hustling mean to you?
I think it's a whole way of life, isn't it? And I think that to have a bit of hustle, a bit of edge is so good, and to have that in a good spirit. So for me, I think, it could embody my lifestyle, my way of being. Hustling but happy. Or happy but hustling, I don't know.
I love it. Nic Marks, y'all. Thanks for watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love, everyone.